Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Faust. Will you tell me if, because I can't remember, it was probably about 2016, that year, that I asked to put into the budget that we incentivize the reduction of caseload by giving a stipend above and beyond your money that you get from the state. You get extra money if you lower it, keep it down. But I can't remember if that expired or not. Are you still receiving that? Or was that just session law and it ended?
Madam Chair, Senator Thompson, that is not, no, there is
There's
no
no longer
incentive for, no ma'am.
Okay.
No ma'am.
That was my only question.
Okay.
Sam Butler.
Thank you. So I guess on a broader characterization of what I think I have heard, I'd like to see. It sounds like we're kind of switching and making more squishy the difference between a caseworker and an investigative worker in determining the FTEs and determining the caseworker workload. Is that, I mean, are we, it seems like you're moving the characterizations and at two percentages and changing things around. Is that accurate?
Madam Chair, Representative Butler, no, I've never been accused of being squishy before, so that's a new one.
The numbers.
Yeah, no, we have made no change in the way that we do the work, in the way we represent that. So from a DCS specialist, we get 1,406 positions. And those positions are really distributed into a couple of buckets. We have hotline workers who are DCS specialists. We have placement administration staff who are DCS specialists. And then within the field offices, they really break into three buckets: investigations, in-home, and out-of-home. Those have remained constant, right? The difference, so we've used a percentage of the break, because if you walk into an office here in Metro Phoenix, there'll be 6 units. So a unit is comprised of a supervisor and 6 specialists. And inside of those 6 units, typically 3 of them are investigations and 3 of them are ongoing, and they're gonna serve a very specific set of assigned zip codes. So the discussion within the audit was, how can you become exact? And I think the example Jeff used was, you have 30 workers. We would always say, for the purposes of the quarterly benchmark report, 50-50, 15 here and 15 there. Auditor General said, well, you should be more precise. And ultimately saying is the net calculation difference was an average of 3, 4 kids difference. And the challenge has been HRIS, which was one of the 2 systems he talked about in the report, is a state HR system and does not have a location. So it just calls a position a specialist, not a specific in-home worker, an out-of-home worker, or an investigative worker. So without that sub-delineation, the easiest calculation for the purpose that is directionally correct and provides a good awareness of where we are as a state, the easiest way to do it was to say, here's how we structure our organization. 1406, remove the hotline workers, split them 50-50 investigations and ongoing, and then measure the kids assigned to those units. The other distinction inside of it, and it's footnoted in detail in the quarterly benchmark, which is now a semi-annual report, is you also have workers in training status. So if a specialist is hired, they're in training status for the first 22 weeks, and we do not give them a full caseload on week 1. They will not carry a full workload until week 18 or week 20 of their tenure in the organization. They have a ramped caseload that starts after their first block in core training, then they'll ramp towards a full caseload at that 18 to 20 week window. So I don't think the insinuation in the audit wasn't that there's anything inaccurate. The statement was, it's a less precise calculation of being granular in the numerator and denominator. Again, we're dealing with broad pieces of information to give us directionally correct information to make policy level decisions about the distribution of our workforce. From our standpoint, nothing has changed from 2015 when we started this to where we are today.
To that point, I have a few questions. So part of the, I think, variability was that you were using information that was not captured in Child's. That was the in-home cases. So is Guardian going to fix that? Are those in-home cases going to be part of the calculation? Are they captured in Guardian? And then I have two other questions along the lines of what we're talking about with caseloads, but I'll take one at a time.
Madam Chair, yes. First one is yes. The Childs didn't have the in-home Guardian, yes.
Okay, so they will have the in-home caseload information that'll help that calculation be more precise going
Yes, ma'am.
forward. Okay. And are supervisors carrying cases? That's something I hear a lot.
So, Madam Chair, we have, especially in some cases when a worker will promote into a supervisor, we may want them to finish portions of their case before, or if a case has nearing completion, so if I have a family who's about to reunify on my caseload and I get promoted from a worker to a supervisor, we may want that supervisor to end that out because it's good for the family and it brings closure to the worker in a positive way. In most cases, that's not what we seek, right? So we constantly seek those deals. We do not want supervisors carrying load. It would be a fallacy if I told you that it never exists, but it is not our desire nor our intent to have that be a standard practice.
I know it's a huge problem with turnover and workforce shortages right now with across the board throughout the economy and especially healthcare and DCS, but is there a way to, for the public to see whether or not supervisors are carrying cases are you capturing that information for the public?
Madam Chair, for the public, I don't believe so, but we can go back and look to see what options we have to provide you a snapshot of what that looks like.
Okay. The other thing was our case managers making their monthly visits. That's probably in one of the reports, then I wasn't able to check on the latest one, but can you maybe have Shalom or somebody look that up?
Madam Chair, on the math, I can say yes, and I can say that because there are, we just reported this to the feds on a similar thing, so we can provide that information
That
to you.
percentage?
Yeah,
Okay.
and will I say, is it 100%? I'll say, no, it's not gonna be 100% because things will arise and challenges will get there. With 250 employee shortage, it gets to be a barrier, but if I remember correctly, it was 87% was the number we reported to the feds, and that was just 2 weeks ago we reported it. But we can get you that detail.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have another question?
I do.
Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Okay, so I think, can you restate the numbers that you gave us for the number of children in care and then the number of open investigations that are still open?
Madam Chair, Representative Butler. So depending on what piece of information you're looking, the one I'm gonna give and the numbers I would have stated would be the data I have of today, and we'll make sure we send our weekly slide deck to you that regard. 13,089 youth under the age of 17 in out-of-home care. And I believe it to be today 10,700 total open investigations that would have been as of Monday. And we'll send you that. We have some regular weekly reporting. If you look at the quarterly benchmark, it would have been higher just because it's a delayed reporting. Our monthly outcomes and operations report, which is published each month, is online, and it will have the latest and greatest monthly data.
Okay, and Madam Chair, so thank you. So if we have 10,700 total open investigations, and I think you said you'd rather see that number around 7,500. So, I mean, that's significantly higher than the number that we believe we'd like to see. So I'm worried about what looks like in this slide that you are distributing adjusted full-time positions to investigators and case managers. So we are looking at the data, and so we want to see that the caseloads are within the boundaries. But now it looks like that's when I talked about it looking squishy, because is an investigator now doing the work of a case manager or vice versa, and is that leading to, and what would you say is leading to so many open investigations still needing to be completed?
Madam Chair, Representative Butler, typically do not move work when we equalize. We will not typically move work from investigations to ongoing to investigations. It's usually investigator to investigator, office to office. So it's within the discipline, but it would be an adjacent office. So in Maricopa County, we've got nearly 10 offices, so it's not out of line for us to do an equalization across. You know, I'll have an office at West 101 in the West Valley, so 95th and McDowell, and we may equalize that with an office that's sitting in Avondale. So we wouldn't normally go investigations to ongoing or vice versa. It's gonna be office to office within that discipline. You asked a very specific question of what up that number. Two-part. Number one, it is difficult to respond when you're down 250 people, so I think that's contributing to it. The second thing that added to it is going live with our Guardian system. So when we went live a year ago, it put a serious dent in the way we do work, because it's new adoption, new system, no closing, and we simply got behind for about 6 weeks, and then we've been chasing ever since. Now, this number peaked, so you say, hey, should we be concerned that the number is greater than, we're always concerned about it. It's our responsibility to be concerned about it. The number actually peaked at just about 12,500, 13,000, and the team has been working it down. So I feel good that the right actions are happening. Tuesday afternoon at 3 o'clock, there's an accountability call that happens with the statewide leaders and the deputy director to go through the details and what we call net zero. Are you closing more than you received? And so through those reviews and through the discussions weekly in the offices, we get into a level of granularity to say what's happening, what are we doing to trend, and how do we generate labor hours, whether that's through overtime. We have people from central office come out and help. We distribute work and bring supports in, especially to those areas that are challenged. So yeah, we'd like to see 60 days worth of work open. That's the goal. It puts you right in that 8,000 window, 7,500, 8,000. But again, to the concern, the trend is coming down. We feel comfortable that progress is being made.
Thank you, and just to follow up, so can you provide data on the way that the cases are being shifted between offices then? How many per office? Is it one office? I mean, is that data available somewhere?
Madam Chair, Representative Butler, yes, we have it. I would actually recommend if you want to get to that level of detail, we sit down and go through, because it happens on a daily, weekly basis. It's not like we just store it up and move chunks. It's in the moment, in the day, depending on what's happening in a particular space. We'd be more than happy to sit down and go through that with you.
And Madam Chair, last question. So when it's in Maricopa County and there's density of offices, I can understand that. What happens when it's in rural Arizona, where there's nowhere to shift?
Madam Chair, Representative, that's a great question, because when you get out to the corners of Arizona, it gets more complex. We'll still move people over and have them help in offices, so you won't necessarily shift assignment of work more than if somebody's caught up in one area, they may go do a couple days or a week in another office to help. It does become more of a challenge, and you see more sharing of resources amongst that. That's why our regional leaders oversee, so we have 2 regional leaders that oversee the majority of our rural counties, because there's a unique nature of dealing with the geography of rural Arizona versus the density of urban. So there is equalization, but the process becomes slightly different because you just simply don't have as many resources to draw from.
And I'm sorry, you said you were going to be going into the missing children reports.
Madam Chair. Okay. So I also want to talk about the missing children, but I also want to talk about Guardian. I've got a lot of questions to ask about Guardian and how that's rolling out, and some complaints we're hearing.
I think he's gonna be
But before that, before you go into that, you talked about the 250. I vaguely remember it was 100 openings a few years ago, and so it looks like it's going up. What do you think is going to attract more employees? It seems like we increased pay, and is that not working? What do you think we need to help you with in order for you guys to be able to have retention and people applying?
More kidnappers.
Madam Chair, Senator Townsend, that's a great question, and one, like I said, we deeply discussed as a national challenge. Couple parts. There's always what I call get out of bed money, right? You have to have the starting wage and the compensation enough to support staff. And as inflation continues to grow, that number, because we start chasing that number, it becomes even more difficult because the cost of living further rises, and then it seems as the demands or the needs of the workforce change, us as an employer and as a state government can't keep up with those changes. So compensation is always, the first place to start. Creating a culture where our folks can practice, because you gotta think, these folks get attacked, right? This is tough work that they do, and I understand in some regards that feeling, but it is really, really tough for those folks. So for us, creating an environment where they are psychologically safe and can practice their work, to try to do their best to help families be successful, is part of it. Creating flexibility for our workforce. So we do have a mobile workforce, but finding that balancing act of how much time in the office, how much time out of the office, how much is in the public, is another one. And then turnover breeds turnover. And that's just an interesting thing. When people see employees resign, they get a level of dismay. So you say, hey, well, what happens to the reports on their caseload, right? Then those reports are gonna get transferred to the people who are still remaining. And so that in itself, creates a challenge. So we're really focusing our efforts on less on we're still focusing on recruitment, but we're bifurcating the conversation now and spending more conversation on retention. What are those key retention items? So how do we bring support? So fiscal compensation is always one, and the legislature always plays a role in helping with that. For us, is creating the environment, the flexibility. We're also bringing back folks on a part-time basis, maybe folks who have retired, or folks who took another job but are willing to come back, still stay part-time and do work. Just trying to bring whatever relief we can to fabricate those man hours, to actually to pick up some of that work. We've done that with paraprofessionals and other supports within the office, but I think that becomes the mainstay. And as long as inflation keeps up, it keeps rising, I think this challenge around compensation is gonna continue to be oppressed, because even though we've been able to help our workforce, that doesn't go a fraction of what it used to, simply because the cost of living. And if you live anywhere in the state of Arizona, finding housing and affordable housing for our workforce, much less the families we serve, they're challenged to an even greater extent. We're gonna continue to be challenged. And this, like I said, this is something we saw. I mentioned earlier, we were 91% filled, we're down 250, it's gonna put us about 84% filled. We heard a story from a leader in Richmond, she wasn't from Richmond, she said typically they're 80% occupied in their positions, and she was only 33% filled. And so, seeing this issue nationally is raising other concerns.
Madam Chair.
To that point, Madam Chairman, Mayor,
Yes.
what are the beginning salaries and training that's involved in filling those 250 positions?
Madam Chair, Representative Griffin, from I'm gonna ask for some help on the starting pay, but on the training side of it, every specialist who comes in, number one, you have to have a 4-year degree. Number two, you're gonna go to what we call core training, which is a 22-week engagement, where it starts with a week in the classroom and a week in the field. So you're going in, you're learning our safety model, you're learning practice, and then you're gonna go out in the field with a checklist of, you need to go experience these things with a peer, with your supervisor. You're gonna do that on and off for about 8 weeks, and then you're gonna start moving into the office on a reduced caseload, and we're gonna slowly add cases to that until you hit that 18 to 20 week window. Shalom's gonna talk about starting pay, but the other thing we started 2 years ago was we created a supervision coaching model to actually help continue coaching through our supervisors to our staff, not only on practice, but creating an environment where folks can be successful. If you wanna comment on pay, that'd be great.
Good morning, Madam Chair, members of the committee. My name is Shalom Jacobs. I'm the Deputy Director at the Department of Child Safety. So I'll get the exact pay scale and send it over to you, but just to give you reference, when we hire, it starts just over 38. After they complete the 22 weeks training, it's just over 40. Then there is a series of bumps every year by tenure, and they top out at 49. So that'll give you the range, and if I can get
Can you repeat that?
Certainly. So they are hired at just over 38. When they complete the 22 weeks training, which is critical why we made this adjustment, it's right when Retirement starts to come out about the 6-month point, they go just over 40. And then each year after, they get a raise to the point where they top out at 49 after being 3 years or 3.5 technically. So I'm gonna send the scale to you, I just need to pull it up.
Madam Chair,
Senator Townsend,
if you had a magic wand,
at that point,
yes, what would the ideal salary be?
Madam Chair, Senator Townsend, I'm not sure that I can answer that. You know, certainly, this is an extremely tough job. Previously, I can tell you that we see turnover halt significantly at the 50,000 range. Because our positions that are compensated 50 and above turnover less. However, you know, I don't know what's influencing that. I don't know if it's the case carrying nature